For many, a diagnosis can bring loss, but what if instead of focusing on what's lost, we saw the vibrant creativity and art that continue to flourish? My guest today is Marilyn Raichle, Executive Director of Maude's Awards for Innovation in Alzheimer's Care, whose personal journey with her mom's dementia offered a remarkable story of discovery, love, and the power of art. When Marilyn's mom began to paint after her Alzheimer's diagnosis, what emerged was not only a vibrant collection of artwork, but a new lens through which Marilyn saw her mom, a full person expressing joy, wit, and resilience. Today, we talk about Marilyn's care partner journey, the moments of joy and challenge, the lessons she's learned along the way, and how art became a bridge to understanding. And we are all at a place of reimagining our care partnership and caregiving to see not just what is lost, but what remains. Here is my interview with Marilyn. Looking forward to our visit today, learning more about you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it is my pleasure.
Wonderful to have you. Okay, I read the book. It's beautiful, by the way. It is just such a testament to your journey with your mom, and I'm really looking forward to diving into that a little bit more. But first, tell us about you. How did you, A, writing this book, but B, doing the work that you're doing?
Well, it took a long time. Prefacing all of this, his mother told us when we were kids that if she and dad ever got dementia, we were supposed to walk away.
Mm,
She said, we're not going to remember you. We're going to be fine. So don't sacrifice your lives for us and walk away. And
wow.
okay, we all believed it. So that when mom and dad's dementia, and dad also had Parkinson's and was developing dementia when mom was. And so when they started to develop dementia, it was right after the recession and there were no jobs. So I couldn't find a job. And so my family said, okay, you're going to be a family caregiver and we're going to give you some money to help keep you afloat. And I said, great. And so I became their caregiver, a very, very, very reluctant caregiver.
Oh,
Um, and I did the best I could, which was not good. I was there. I took care of appointments, and mom and dad lived in a wonderful continuing care facility. Clever
mm,
them. Um, and so over time, it took about 6 months. Um, and I started to listen to them. And dad wanted the best for mother, and mom wanted the best for dad. So their needs became my needs.
mm.
And so I was not experiencing joy or loss, but shared purpose. And that was the best way for me to move forward. And it was a pretty good one, actually. And so I continued on my journey with them until dad died at the age of 89. And then that's when my life as a caregiver completely changed.
Right. Yeah, it did. And your journey, it's touched so many people, right? You've had such an impact. And for you, when you first heard that diagnosis, it just flipped the narrative for you, right? Where all of a sudden you had to step into a new role. How was that for you to hear that information after being told to walk away? And then how did you find yourself stepping into that role? You said it was reluctant, right?
Yeah. I mean, I did walk away. I
Yeah.
completely walked away. I mean, the time when before mom started to paint, I was not aware of anything having to do with what I should be doing. I didn't know much. I just was being a good daughter, she was fortunate to live in a great place that was really, really helpful. Um, and so it was just long and hard, and it was it was her art that changed it.
Mm.
Everything changed. That was the most important thing that changed. Everything changed after that completely.
Yeah, completely. So with the theme of not walking away, and that's the title of your book is Don't Walk Away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Don't walk away.
don't walk
It
away.
it was and is the most rewarding thing I have ever done. I am so lucky that number one, I was in a position where I was able to do that.
Mhm.
And number two, I was in a position where I couldn't walk away. I
Right.
was prevented from walking away. I walked away emotionally, but I couldn't
Mhm.
walk away physically. And it was being there that it slowly crept in, that I was emotionally invested in the lives of my parents. After, I
Right.
mean, I come from a emotionally reserved, I think that's the
Mm.
polite way of saying family, where emotions were we never ever used the word love in our family. We all knew it was there, but we never ever spoke of it. So that becoming this change with mom was a life changer for me. It
Yeah.
it it made me, I mean, it made me a better person.
Wow. Yeah, and you said it changed you emotionally. How did it do that? What did you find was evolving within yourself to be stepping into that care partner role?
Well, so once mom started to paint, because she was very, very bored after dad died. And so I took her to this wonderful painting class called Elderwise, which was for people living with dementia. And she didn't expect anything. I didn't expect anything. She thought painting was silly.
Mm.
And so I took her to the painting class, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, look at this painting. It was really amazing. So I wanted to see more. This fascinated me because you immediately start to realize, oh, my my belief that there's nobody there, mother
Mhm.
had told us, was
Mhm.
completely wrong. There was a woman living with wit and invention and joy.
Mhm.
And that was astonishing to me. And so that's that first moment when I let go of the person that I thought used to be, and then just embraced the person who was with me in the moment. It was being able to be with her in the moment that
Mhm.
was the most important thing. So
Right.
every week I would go back to see what new paintings she had done. And the paintings were just astonishing, sometimes just good, and sometimes just remarkable. And that's when everything changed. It, it enabled me to see mom. It enabled me to want to be with mom.
Mhm.
I still wasn't I had walked halfway back. I
Yeah.
hadn't walked all the way back because I turned her art into a new career. So I basically, I was so amazed whenever I would show mom's art to anybody, family, friends, their reaction was always the same. I had no idea. The
Wow.
art was effortlessly able to cut through fear and to cut through denial
Mhm.
and to enable people to want to, number one, see more, to learn more, and maybe understand, like I was beginning to, oh, these are really interesting people. They
Mhm.
have something to give. This
Mhm.
is worthwhile. So I turned it into a program called the Art of Alzheimer's. I established art exhibits. Once I did an art exhibit featuring 41 artists ages 60 to 101, and that toured. It was just and this is the sad part because I became more invested in her art than I was in mom. And
Mm.
and and so I hadn't walked all the way back. I was
Mhm.
still wanted to be with her, but I was still sort of holding back, and the art enabled me to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It really did reveal this inner world of hers, right? The creativity, the vibrancy. And I'm curious, did she ever paint prior to her diagnosis?
When she was 6, she painted when she was 6. She had written a diary and she said, I'm painting animals that nobody has ever heard of.
Mm.
And so, but then after that, her whole family was really invested in the arts. They sang and they all played instruments and they wrote poetry, but no painting. And so it was with mom when she took her to the painting class, and I had to take her because if I didn't take her, she wouldn't go. Because
Mhm.
again, this is silly, this is stupid, this is a dumb thing to do. And so when I brought her there, but she was more invested in the people around the painting table, the community of people. So
Mm.
when she started to paint, as soon as she lifted the paintbrush, she started to hum. And that's when she sort of went into her own little area. She just hummed and she was really fast. And so she'd finish the painting. She'd sign it and then she'd come back. Sometimes she'd come back and see these people seated around the table and she'd say, "Oh, may I join you?" And then she'd do it again, which was
Mm.
great. But it was fascinating to me. And so some of the paintings seem to indicate that, I mean, if when she first started to paint, when she saw a flower, she painted a flower. And then about 7 months into it, she started to transform things. So a zucchini became a dragon, and
Mm.
flowers became a clown. Um, and and it was really fascinating to me. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So once she painted a bunch of irises, and what she painted was this glowering face
Mm.
appearing through the irises. And I thought, okay, then you have to start paying attention to the paintings because she might be trying to communicate something to me, something that she couldn't communicate verbally. So there's this flowering face. Most of her paintings were just happy, and fun.
Mm.
Astonishing. I mean, the cover of the book, there's this interesting little figure of sort of walking, and it turns out that's her painting of pink carnations.
Wow.
So that you have to figure out that she wasn't painting what the model on the table was. Most of the time, she was painting what was in her mind's eye.
Mm.
And what was in her mind's eye was really interesting.
It's incredible to see. It really is. And it's so vibrant, right? The pictures and the paintings in the book, they're
Yeah.
beautiful to look at. Many people focus on what dementia takes away, but you talk
Yeah.
about in the book what it spares. What
Yeah.
are some examples of that? I know your mom's
Um,
curiosity came out, her humor. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about
she
that.
was so funny. Mother made me laugh until the minute she died. She
Mm.
was funny. So that there was one time, there are so many examples, but um, we played Scrabble all the time. Even when she couldn't make a word, we would just add the scores up. She was very competitive. Um, and so we were playing Scrabble and she couldn't figure out what a word was. And she couldn't figure out, she said, "Is dog a word?" And I said, and then she looked at me and she stopped and she said, "You know, sometimes your brain just gets in the way." And then she made Jewel on the triple.
Mm.
It was just like, okay,
Ah.
mom. And then I've written down because they were so funny. Oh, she did this over and over again. She'd say, "Would you like my soul?" And I said, "No, mom, I want you to keep your soul. You may
Mm.
need it to see dad when he joins you, when you join him in heaven." She said, "Well, maybe, maybe I could give you my soul. And then when I go to heaven, I could steal it and go back and no one would know." And I said, "But mom, that would require me to die too." And she said, "Oh, all right then. Well, then I will just grab it from you and you can run away."
Mm.
I said, "Okay, that works for me." And she had did this one thing. She asked me this question over and over and over and over again. She kept saying, "What do you think Seattle is going to be like in 50 years?"
Wow.
And at the beginning, I would make up things. I said, "Well, maybe it'll be like this and maybe it'll be like this." And then finally, I realized that if she kept asking me this question, it meant something to her. I
Mm.
finally was listening, finally. And so I said, "Well, what do you think it's going to be like?" And this torrent of ideas started coming out. She said, "Well, maybe we'll all fly.
Mm.
Maybe women will start wearing skirts again." I mean, it was just so much fun. And I thought, oh, so many opportunities I missed by not asking her that question.
Right.
So that one of those big lessons I learned is listen and ask questions. She's trying to tell you something.
Yeah. You know, a
And
lot.
everything she did was funny.
Ah, so many great memories. It really is. And you speak about those moments of fear within our caregiving. What advice would you offer other caregivers who might be feeling overwhelmed and potentially hopeless about their loved one's diagnosis? What advice would you give them?
Well, first thing is it's not about you.
Mm.
It's about them. So many people are so upset because they're projecting how they would feel if they were in their loved one's shoes. But you're not. They are. And they're living and they're light years ahead of you in coping with this.
Mm.
Um, and so Don't ask. Don't keep trying to bring them back. It only frustrates them and it irritates you. And so those questions like, do you remember or don't you remember? Well, no, no, no. I stopped asking anything like that. It was like, be with her in the moment.
Mhm.
Ask, be with her. Don't just one person who is new to caregiving and her mother was developing dementia. She said, I don't know what to do. I can't talk to her. I don't know what to say. And I said, okay, just ask her one question and then hop on for the ride.
Mhm.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Um, that being in the moment means letting your guard down
Mhm.
and just reacting to what they are doing, what they are saying. And I got to the point rather quickly that being with mom in the moment was so restful. I
Mm.
mean, at that point, I was working, excuse me, I was working and it was very stressful. And I found that I went to visit mom and all her companions in assisted living because it was so peaceful. And I also had quickly realized because I thought, well, of course, mother looks forward to my visits, because
Mm.
that's. And then I realized, oh no, no, actually, she is far closer to all of her companions in assisted living. And
Mhm.
I discovered mother had a new family. And
Mm.
fortunately for me, they were willing to accept me into their family.
Wow.
Um, And so I had six adopted mothers in assisted living who were very close to me. It was just so that I loved being with them. I loved being with mom. There were no expectations but joy. And for somebody who came from my background, where every expectation was the antithesis of joy, um, you had to protect yourself. I mean, I used to say I was fist clenched, um, and and incredibly competitive or so was mom. Um, but but it was peaceful. It was calm. And
Wow.
I started to learn from mother.
Mm. You grew together. Yeah.
Well,
You.
the other thing is people always say, oh, I became the mother and she became the daughter.
Mm.
Never. For me, mother was always the mother. I was always the daughter. I was always learning from her.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I think that oh, and I know people say that, and I feel that there is you're learning from each other. And I think it's important to keep that right there. There'll always be mom. And yes,
Yeah.
our relationship evolves. I think that there's such an important distinction with that. And you also talk about, I love how you say they're not suffering from dementia, but living
Yeah.
with it, right? And
And I learned that early. I mean, again, it was the art. So it was like, oh, and also I was lucky enough to be working in an environment where there were all these people working in the world of dementia care, and they knew far more than I did. And I resisted the idea for a long time, living with, no, no, she's suffering from. And that was my investment. And then I realized, oh, no, no, she's living with it. And so that's when you hear about people talking about people living with dementia. That's
yeah,
sort of standard. And that the term suffering from it just disappeared. Because
yeah,
she wasn't suffering. She
yeah.
was, but there was this one key moment where I changed. And it was because of mom. Well,
Mm.
everything is because of mom.
Mhm.
But once her paintings started to become, to me, disjointed and they looked like they were diminishing and the colors were all the same, the subject was all the same, scratchy lines, and I thought, interesting. So I went to the class early, and this is back when I was just visiting just to get the art, and I went to the class early. And we did everything she loved to do. We looked at the view, we took a walk, we played Scrabble, we laughed, and then I took her to the painting class, and her painting completely changed.
Mm.
Instead of these scratchy lines, warm animal image appeared. And it was like, and that's when I realized that was the most important moment. I thought, oh, I see. I have something to do with this. That's when I realized that we were partners.
Yeah.
And I changed from being a caregiver, giving
Mm.
to somebody who needed my care, to partner. We were working together to build a life for each other.
Mm.
And so everything after that. So when you read about, I'm a care partner or I'm a caregiver, it's nothing against being a caregiver, but that moment when you realize we're
Yeah.
partners,
Yeah.
that was key.
Wow. What a great reminder. I love how you share about this concept of scaffolding, right? It's so powerful in your book. How can care partners build scaffolding to support
Oh,
their loved ones, right? Remaining strengths, helping us in our journey.
it's a process. It's a process that number one, you have to realize that it's not about you. And
Mhm.
once you realize that, then it's not quite so scary. You get to just be there. You get to listen. You get to ask questions. Um, and and it's it's fascinating in that the more you do with someone,
Mm.
the more things pop up that you're enjoying. And then the more things you can do. So that with me, it was, it was the art, yes, but it was also we sang.
Mm.
Um, we you can just look at the view. You can just be with each other. You can take walks. Look for anything that you enjoy doing together.
Mm.
Anything that calms you down. You need
Yeah.
to calm down and just relax and
Mhm.
know that she's there and that you just need to listen and she will emerge. That it's the moment is quite easy once you get the hang of it. It just takes a little while, but it's like, calm down. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Just take a step. Take a step. Take one step
Yeah.
and it'll just keep multiplying. So that then when somebody said, what do you enjoy doing together? Everything. I mean,
Mm.
Scrabble was so much fun. We played Scrabble every single day.
Wow.
Um, it was anything, everything became fabulous. And
Mm.
anything when we would look out at the view, I mean, when she would ask me what Seattle is like in 50 years, sometimes it would be, what is Seattle going to be like in 500 years? And then she would say, well, I'm not going to be here, so you'll have to come up and tell me what it's like. Um, and I said, okay, sure. Um, it was just, it's this process of mutual discovery. You're discovering all these things about her, but you're also discovering something about yourself that
Yeah.
that for somebody from my background, we're being nurturing, sort of like, no, 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 you don't do that. For me, it was just miraculous.
Wow. What a beautiful reflection. Yes.
Plus, the art was so much fun. I mean, who wouldn't enjoy the art?
I know. It's one of my passions for
Oh,
sure. The community where your mom lived in her assisted living played such an important role in
yeah,
that experience. How did you see that community come together to support her, others living with dementia? What can we learn about that, right? If we're creating an environment
yeah.
where people thrive.
Well, number one, everybody in that facility was committed to the people who lived there.
Mhm.
Um, the staff was there. I mean, the staff actually helped me do something really cool for mom because one of the things that you realize is that being of value, having purpose is something that was so abundant in their lives and now so lacking. And so mother would always ask me for ways she could help. Can I help you do this? When I was talking about gardening, she said, well, can I help you? I said, well, it's pretty filthy, mom. You'll have to get gloves. But at lunchtime, I asked the staff to give me a whole bunch of napkins. And I took all the napkins and buttoned them up and put them on the table. And mother then folded them.
Mm.
And she folded all the napkins and put them down. I said, Mother, that is just wonderful. You're now the folder in chief. And she was very happy. And we did this every day. And I did this at Thanksgiving with my family. Mother folded all the napkins. She had purpose, not something that we might think is hugely valuable, but she had purpose. the other thing about the staff, about the facility, is she had friends.
Mm.
And that was critical. My mother had best friends that she was always hanging out with. Mother had friends throughout the building. Um, they were, I would always go there every day at lunchtime because that's when everybody was most relaxed. And so one of the first things I did is that I would invent ways to make them all happy. And so I started giving them shoulder massages. And I would
Oh,
ask first, would you like a shoulder massage? And they wouldn't necessarily know what that meant. But one person said yes. So I was giving her this very gentle shoulder massage. And she was so happy. Everybody in the table wanted one because that woman was so happy. They were happy for her, but they wanted to be happy too. And it just went around and around the table. And then other people wanted them. Um, it, it, it became my daily ritual. I would give people shoulder massages. And the best compliment I have ever received in my entire life came from Gloria, who lived there. And one day she came up to me and she said, do you tuck your wings in a handkerchief when you're not here?
oh,
And so
I love
they
that.
were, they supported each other. Once mom and her two best friends, Phyllis and Kathleen, we were up on the roof and we were looking at the birds and they were talking about the birds. And Phyllis didn't speak. She sang once, but she didn't speak. So Kathleen said, do you think the birds talk to each other the way we do? Do you think they understand? And they were talking about the birds and looking at the birds. And then when we left, Kathleen turned to me and she said, we enjoy each other,
Wow.
which I've never forgotten because these were her friends. And we all have best friends, and you don't necessarily put yourself in the shoes of the people who live where mom lived. But then there are things when if you're not fortunate enough to have a family member who lives in one of these places, but your person's living at home, which is much more difficult. But
Mhm.
the thing I would say is find opportunities for them to have social contact. So senior centers, memory cafes. There are programs in Seattle where people learn to dance. I mean, they're just lots and lots of different things you can do that give them the ability to have social contact. And that's really important because those are friends.
Right, right. Oh, incredibly important and life-giving. Yes, completely. I think that the shoulder massage is a wonderful way. We need touch. Oh my gosh, we
Touch.
could starving for that. Yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
it's the one thing that with my father, if I'd known then what I know now, I would have, well, number one, I would have just been there. So he knew he wasn't going to be abandoned. I would have given him shoulder massages because he loved that. I'm,
Mm,
I would have, what I would have, I could have told my father that I loved him.
yeah,
Just little things. They don't, mom, not everybody was mom.
right.
But just that we could have just sat with each other.
Hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes mom and I did, and then she'd take one of her stuffed animals and throw it at me and laugh. And so then I would take it up and I'd throw it back to her. And so we would play catch with her stuffed animals. I mean,
That
just
humor. Yeah.
anything, everything that you can do with someone that brings laughter
Right.
because you've taken yourself out of the equation. It's all
Mm,
about them.
important reminder. You reference the philosopher Martin. How do you pronounce his last name? Buber?
I'm sorry,
You reference
Boober,
the
Boober.
philosopher Martin Buber.
Yeah.
The idea of the I thou relationship. How did this shape the way you interacted with your mom? Like, how can we apply this approach with our loved ones?
It's for me, it's the I thou. I'm
Mm,
working with you. It's the we that I we together, I thou is the equation that's the most important thing. Not you, me, you. It's I thou.
right.
I'm working for you, with you. Um, it's such a liberating thing.
Oh, it is. It is. It really is. And it's such a two-way street, right? You share that the two-way the
Yeah.
two-way relationship. It is. There's so much we can learn and your wisdom with this book. There is a message of hope for caregivers. There is a message of wisdom, advice, those aha moments that we can pull that we've learned along the way. If you could share with care partners, what is that one piece of advice and wisdom that you'd like us to walk away from?
Let's see. I actually wrote this down because it's an important thing.
Mm,
There too. First, it's not about you, not about you. And relax. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. She's there. But don't be afraid. It's
mm,
not about you. Listen, listen, ask questions. It's one of the most fascinating, rewarding things you will ever do. It's so important. And the other thing is that the more you do with someone, the more there will be to do, the more you
mm.
will enjoy, the more you will discover. But it's
Yeah,
that relax, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, relax. Not about you.
yeah. Seeing the lightness, seeing the lightness. That is another piece of that. You've been such a beacon of light for others. How can we practically find our own light? You know, you've done that so beautifully. You've said how this has changed you, how you've found your lightness in this, how it's helped you evolve emotionally in ways. How can we do that on our own? What advice would you give us?
Well, again, it goes back to that. Don't be afraid. None of this would have happened if I'd been thinking about sorrow and loss.
Mm,
I I was talking to a gentleman once, and he was telling me about his wife and visiting her. And he said, every time I see her, she kisses me and she tells me she loves me. But when I
mm,
look in her eyes, there's nothing there.
wow.
And I thought to myself, why is it that he couldn't see what I most likely would have? And I think the difference is if you have the opportunity to share joy.
Mm,
If you have an opportunity to share joy, then you can see who's there. So if you're sharing a walk, if you're sharing a song, if you're playing catch with a stuffed animal, if you're painting together, if you're doing looking at the view,
mm,
look at that view. Anything that touches you emotionally is touching her emotionally.
wow.
Share joy. It will open up how you view each other.
Mm, the pathways. Yeah.
And she will see you as her partner and her friend. So that every time I saw mom, she knew sometimes she didn't know who I was, but then she would, remember. But it doesn't matter if she knew I was her daughter. She knew is that I was her friend and she liked me
Mm,
and she was happy to see me. That's all that mattered.
yeah.
So
Wow.
you have to put aside all the things you need from this person to make
Mhm.
you feel better. Forget about all of that.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. If your mom could see the impact of her story, what it's had in the lives of other people, what do you think she would say about that? How her life and art have helped others in this journey?
Well, as a McPhee, she came from a Scottish Calvinist family. As a McPhee, doing good works was terribly important. So prior to developing late stage dementia, she would have been pleased. She would have been mystified that
Mm,
her art could have this impact, but she would have been pleased. She she in her later days, she thought the painting was so silly. So that if I complimented her on her painting or told her that she was doing wonderful things, she looked at me and she said, well, I must have gotten this from your father's side of the family.
mm,
She 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 would have pushed all that aside. But in her innermost McPhee being, she would have been thrilled to know she was making a difference in the lives of others.
yeah, completely. Good. Well, the legacy lives on. And now with this book, how are you still involved in the arts? What does that look like for you?
Well, first I have to read one thing that I wrote about mom that
Mm,
sums
okay.
up that's important. It's very short. I wrote this when she was 96.
Mm,
I hope I can age like mom, living in a life abundant with love, purpose, and friends, fascinated by the world, curious about the future, and filled with laughter, focusing on the positive, accepting the inevitable, and enjoying the ride.
mm.
That's mom. That's how I could live. I wish everyone could live like that and realize that in her, in her, in her essence, that's what she felt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we will take that and learn from that. It's important. And I think that that's what we do in these moments and why we share these reflections and stories. Is it because it gives us encouragement to keep going in our own lives and in our own relationships and in our own journey? So,
Yeah.
so appreciative of you doing that with us today. Everyone needs to read the book. Tell us where we can purchase the book, where we can connect with you, the work that you're doing. We'd love to be able to do that.
You can get the book on Amazon. You can also go to our website, which is don'twalkaway.net, and you
Mm,
can find out more about the book. And you can also go to the Amazon link and just purchase it right there.
yeah.
It's 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 fun. It's so much fun to have written the book. I mean, this is something I never thought I would do ever. Um, and it's only because art cuts through fear, and
Yeah.
you see the art and you go, whoa. And it was the art, that opened up the next chapter of my life, which is working with Maude's Awards. Um, but it also did this one truly important thing. It it made me so many things, but one of them was to accept that I can love and be loved.
Mm, that's
And
so
that came from all of mom's new family and mom. And
wow.
if I had to look at everything, it's this ability to have changed, to
Mm,
have opened myself up to love,
mm,
because it was like, and 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 with mom, it was. I think one of the questions I saw in your questionnaire was, how did the art change you? How did art change my perception of mother? These were all things I knew, but they were not things I felt.
mm,
I knew she was wonderful and industrious and all those things, but I never felt love with mom because that word was never, ever, ever spoken. I
right.
knew she loved me because that was her job, but I never felt it. But when we became care partners, then it just blossomed.
Wow. How important for us to hear that because some of us might have those types of relationships in our lives. And
Yeah.
so it gives us that hope that we can have that exchange, right, of love. And it might not look like we had hoped it to in the past, but to see the beautiful expression of that now,
Mm-hmm.
that's so powerful.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Well, I know, I think I remember it was either in a conversation we had prior or in the book, but with your family's history, uh there was also not this oh gosh, what are the right words? Uh you weren't going to have a funeral or funerals and celebrations
Oh, right.
weren't a thing. How did you end up celebrating your mom after she
Well,
passed?
it was interesting. So in the McPhee family, there were to be no funerals, no memorial services, and no tears, no
Right.
tears. And so we did have a memorial service for mom, um, and her old sister Louise, who was uh, she's like 97 at the time, and or 96, and her cousin Frank, both in their late 90s, and they were in the front row. And I got up when it was my turn, and I got up and I said, okay, I realize that this is showy, which was the
Mm.
McPhee word for it. And they both like went like this. And so, and so I started to talk about mom. And then I realized with absolute panic that I was starting to cry. And
Mm,
that could not happen, just could not happen. And so I just tamped it down with every ounce of my being
mm,
and sat down. But I never cried. I
wow.
couldn't eat for three weeks, but I never cried
Mm,
because that was just you don't cry, and it was just so ingrained in us. And so we did have a memorial service, and then we put together mom and dad's ashes and took them to their beach house, and then put them in the water and sang Old Lang Syne.
wow. Wow. It sounds like a lovely day.
Yeah,
It does. It sounds like a lovely day. There was a film made about your mom, correct?
yeah.
Can you tell us
Yeah,
a bit about
it was
that?
because of the art. Yeah, two things, interesting things happened because of the
Yeah.
art. So this wonderful guy named Charlie Watts had been looking at the art, and he wanted to make a short film about mom. And it's called The Art of Alzheimer's, and it was about 4 minutes long, and it's just beautiful. And there's a link in the book so you can actually see it. Um, and it's just again shows all her art, the creativity, and it's joyous. That's
Mm.
the other thing. This is a joyous book about Alzheimer's. Um, and then she also was the subject of a TV broadcast, and that won an Emmy. And I told her because I
Oh,
said, "Mom, guess what? You won an Emmy. You won an award." And she went, "Yay!" And and so the John Sharisky, who produced it, he gave the Emmy to mom. So I still have the Emmy.
that's incredible. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's been quite a journey, and it continues to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all that comes to be from that. And we appreciate your time. I know I've learned from you and hearing, slow down, be present, ask questions, really listen. All of that is so, so needed in our lives and in all of our relationships. So, we appreciate you and this book, and I'm hopefully everyone will go and purchase that, and we'll put that link in our episode
Oh,
description today. So,
thank you so much, and thank you, mom. I
yeah,
always thank mom.
thanks, Mom. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Are you looking for another encouraging podcast? Let me introduce you to my friend Elizabeth Miller, the host of the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast. She visits with family caregivers and dives into their caregiving and self-care strategies. She also highlights that family caregivers are the experts in caregiving. Beyond the informative conversation, Elizabeth reveals the tried and true resources and practical self care tips that empower caregivers to prioritize their health and happiness. You can find the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast wherever you download your favorite podcast or go to her website, www.happyhealthycaregiver.com. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.